Hello, I'm Sarah Chin, and this is the story of how I discovered that sometimes family can be your greatest adversary, especially in business. For 10 years, I poured everything I had into our family's small tech company, transforming it from a struggling startup into a $50 million enterprise. But as success grew, so did the jealousy, even from those who should have been celebrating my achievements. I remember the beginning, when our family business was nothing more than a small computer repair shop in a strip mall. My dad started it 20 years ago, and though it was his pride and joy, it barely made enough to support us. My sister, Emma, was always the favorite, the straight-A student who went to an elite business school. I, on the other hand, was the quiet one. I stayed behind to help Dad while working towards my computer science degree at a local college. "Sarah, you're wasting your potential," Emma would say when she visited home. "You should be aiming higher." But I saw something in our small shop that others didn't: potential. While Emma studied theoretical business concepts, I focused on learning real-world programming and identifying market gaps. In my final year of college, I developed our first proprietary software, a simple yet effective tool for small businesses to manage their inventory. It wasn't groundbreaking, but it was affordable and user-friendly. At first, Dad was skeptical. But when local businesses started purchasing licenses, he changed his tune. "Maybe you're onto something, kiddo," he said, showing the first sign of pride in my work. Those words meant everything to me at the time. As the business grew, I worked 14-hour days, 7 days a week, while Emma climbed the corporate ladder at a prestigious consulting firm in New York. I was building something real. Our small repair shop evolved into a software development company, and our clientele expanded from local businesses to national corporations. My mom often expressed concern. "Don't work too hard, Sarah," she'd say, bringing me dinner at the office. "You need a life outside of work too." But I was driven by a vision and maybe, deep down, by a desire to prove myself to my family. 5 years into our transformation, we hit our first million in annual revenue. That's when Emma became interested in the business again. She quit her job in New York and moved back home. "I think it's time I take my rightful place in the company," she announced one evening at dinner. "With my business expertise, we can take things to the next level." Dad beamed at her words. "That's wonderful, Princess. We could use your professional touch around here." I sat there, stunned. The company I had built from scratch was being handed to my sister, despite her lack of experience in our industry. But I swallowed my objections and tried to be a team player. Emma was appointed co-CEO alongside me, despite her minimal knowledge of the tech world. Dad said it was important for the company's image to have someone with her credentials at the helm. I focused on product development and operations, while Emma took charge of marketing and investor relations. The next 5 years were a study in contrast. While I continued developing software solutions and maintaining client relationships, Emma focused on creating a glamorous image for herself as the face of the company. She gave interviews about being a woman in tech, accepted awards for entrepreneurship, and took credit for innovations my team and I had created. Our revenue grew to $50 million annually, but so did the tension between us. Emma started excluding me from key meetings, making decisions without consulting me, and gradually pushed me to the sidelines of my own company. Then came Dad's 60th birthday party, the day everything changed. It was Emma's idea to host the event at the city's most expensive hotel. It was less of a birthday celebration and more of a networking event, as far as she was concerned. I arrived early, wearing a simple black dress. Emma immediately criticized me. "Couldn't you have made more of an effort? These are important people," she hissed. I ignored her and focused on greeting guests. The room quickly filled with business associates, clients, and family friends. Emma worked the room like a politician, while I remained in the background ensuring everything ran smoothly. During dinner, Emma clinked her glass and stood up to give a speech. I expected the usual, perhaps a tribute to Dad, some childhood memories. Instead, she dropped a bombshell that shattered everything. "As we celebrate Dad's 60th birthday," she began, her voice echoing across the room, "I think it's time to announce some changes at Chin Technologies. The board has decided that the company needs unified leadership to move forward." My heart stopped. "What board meetings?" I sat frozen as Emma continued. Effective immediately. She continued, her eyes locked on me. I will be taking over as the sole CEO. The room fell silent as her words rang out, the judgment heavy in the air. Some people, she continued, her voice dripping with insincerity, are better suited to technical roles rather than leadership. My sister Sarah has done well maintaining our legacy systems, but to compete in today's market, we need vision. We need excellence. And frankly, Sarah, you're just not cut out for this level of business. I stared at Dad, expecting him to stand up for me. But instead, he was nodding in agreement, a proud smile on his face. Mom stared down at her plate, her hands trembling slightly. Emma's voice rose. Sarah, your old-fashioned ideas and lack of proper business education have become a liability. It's time for you to step aside, gracefully. The room was deathly quiet. Hundreds of eyes were on me, awaiting my response. I could feel the pity, the scorn, the judgment. Everything I had built, every sacrifice I had made, was being stripped away in front of everyone. I stood slowly, my chair scraping loudly against the floor, breaking the silence. Everyone expected a scene, perhaps tears or shouting. Instead, I simply walked over to Dad's table, placed a small wrapped package in front of him, and said softly, "Happy birthday, Dad." Then I left the ballroom, head held high, leaving behind the whispers and stares. Later that night, in my home office surrounded by awards and patents bearing my name, I made a decision. Emma thought she had won, but she had forgotten one crucial detail, something that would turn her triumph into the biggest mistake of her life. As I powered up my laptop and began typing, a small smile tugged at my lips. Tomorrow would be interesting. The next morning, I arrived at the office early. By 9 a.m., Emma walked in with Dad beside her, both wearing smug smiles. Sarah? Emma's voice was a mix of surprise and annoyance. What are you doing here? After last night, I thought you'd have the dignity to stay home. I smiled as I remembered the email I had sent at 3 a.m. to every major client, partner, and employee of Chin Technologies. Just wrapping up a few loose ends, sister dear, but since you're here, we should probably talk about the company's future. There's nothing to discuss, Dad interjected, his voice firm. Emma's in charge now. The board has already approved it. I raised an eyebrow. Yes, the board, I said, pulling out my tablet. Let's talk about that. You see, while Emma was busy planning parties and giving interviews, I had actually built this company. And there are a few things you both seem to have forgotten. I pulled up a document on the conference room's main screen. First, let me remind you that I own 51% of Chin Technologies shares. When we incorporated 10 years ago, Dad gave Emma and me equal shares of 25% each, keeping 50% for himself. But 3 years ago, when we needed capital for expansion, Dad sold me 6% of his shares. Remember that day, Dad? You were too busy attending Emma's awards ceremony to handle the negotiations yourself, so you signed the papers without reading them carefully. The color drained from both their faces. Emma's perfectly manicured hands gripped the conference table. That's impossible, she whispered. Dad would never. I continued, pulling up more documents. And that's not all. The core software that generates 80% of our revenue is not owned by Chin Technologies. It's owned by my separate company, Innovate Solutions LLC. Chin Technologies only has a licensing agreement, which expires. I checked my watch. About 10 minutes ago, Dad collapsed into a chair, realization dawning on his face. The renewal papers, the ones you asked me to sign last week? The ones you were too busy to read because you were helping Emma plan the parties? Yes, those papers, I said, my voice icy. I decided not to submit them. Emma's face contorted with rage. You underhanded little. Careful, sister. I cut her off. You might want to hear the rest before you finish that sentence. While you were busy announcing my supposedly graceful exit last night, I continued, I was sending emails to our clients. Most of our major clients have personal loyalty clauses in their contracts with Chin Technologies because of me, my expertise, my track record. Last night, I informed them of the leadership changes and my departure. I pulled up my email, showing the dozens of responses that had already arrived. Would you like to know how many have already triggered their contract termination clauses? Or how many of our top developers, who, by the way, are employed by Innovate Solutions, have already accepted positions at my new venture? The room fell silent. Through the glass walls, we could see employees gathering, whispers spreading as they checked their emails. Emma's perfect composure cracked as she frantically checked her phone. "You can't do this," she stammered. The company you tried to steal from me, I finished for her. The one you thought you could just take over because you have an MBA and Dad's approval. That company ceased to exist the moment you decided to humiliate me in front of everyone we know." I stood up, smoothing my dress. "So here are your options. Option 1. I walk away with my shares, my software, my clients, and my employees. Chin Technologies becomes an empty shell, and you can explain to all those important people you invited last night why the company's value dropped to zero overnight." Dad's face had aged 10 years in the last 10 minutes. "Option 2, he asked weakly. "Option 2, you both resign. I take full control of Chin Technologies. You keep your shares as silent partners, receiving dividends but having no say in operations. Emma gets a nice severance package and glowing references for her next job, somewhere far away from here." Emma's face had turned an interesting shade of red. "You planned this all along, didn't you?" she spat. "You've just been waiting for the right moment to stab us in the back." I laughed, but there was no humor in it.
"No, Emma.
I spent 10 years trying to be a good daughter and sister while you both took me for granted. I built this company from nothing while you collected accolades for my work. I only planned this." I checked my watch again. "About 12 hours ago, after you called me worthless in front of everyone we know." My phone buzzed. Another client termination notice. "Time's running out," I said. "What's it going to be?" The next hour was a blur of paperwork and lawyers. By noon, I sat alone in what was now my office, looking out over the city. The company I had built was now truly mine, but the victory felt hollow. Family relationships lay in ruins around me. Trust shattered like dropped crystal. Mom came to see me that evening, her eyes red from crying. "Did it have to end this way?" she asked softly. "They gave me no choice," I replied, my voice gentle but firm. "They would have taken everything I built and discarded me without a second thought." She nodded slowly, understanding but sad. "What happens now?" I showed her the plans I had already drawn up. Expansions, new product lines, innovations I had been holding back. Now, I build something even bigger, but this time, I do it without having to carry people who see me as worthless. Over the next year, Chin Technologies tripled in value under my sole leadership. Emma found a job with a startup in Silicon Valley, humbled, but hopefully wiser. Dad retired, finally understanding that his golden child had nearly destroyed his legacy. We see each other at holidays, maintaining a polite distance that masks the wounds that may never fully heal. Sometimes, late at night, I look at old family photos and feel a twinge of sadness for what we lost. But then I remember that night at the birthday party, the look of disdain on Emma's face, the way Dad nodded along with her cruel words. In business and in family, respect is earned, not given. They learned that lesson too late. As for me, I learned that sometimes the quiet ones, the ones dismissed as worthless, are the ones you should watch out for. Because we're the ones who know how to build something from nothing and how to take it all back when others try to steal it. My story spread through business circles, a cautionary tale about underestimating the wrong person. These days, when I attend industry events, I often catch whispers. "That's Sarah Chin," they say. They never finish the sentence, but they don't have to. My success speaks for itself. Last week, I received an invitation to speak at Emma's business school graduation ceremony. The topic, Hidden Strengths, the Power of Underestimated Leaders. I accepted the invitation with a small smile, already planning my speech. After all, I have the company continues to thrive under my leadership. But more importantly, I've found peace with my decisions. Sometimes, the strongest message you can send is simply proving people wrong. And sometimes, the best revenge isn't about destroying others. It's about rising so high that they can't help but see their own mistakes. As I write this from my office overlooking the city, I'm reminded of something my mother once told me. Success is the best revenge. But wisdom is knowing when to stop seeking revenge and start seeking growth. She was right. I've moved past the need for revenge. Now I focus on building something meaningful, something that will outlast all the petty jealousies and family dramas. I still keep that wrapped birthday present I never gave Dad, a photo album of the company's journey from that tiny repair shop to what it is today. Maybe, someday, when the wounds have healed enough, I'll finally give it to him. Until then, it serves as a reminder that our greatest strengths often come from the very things others underestimate about us.